Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. After bruising losses in Wisconsin Tuesday, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are hoping to regain their momentum, campaigning this week in the state they both call home. Here with a look at what's at stake for both of them in New York's April 19th primary and beyond is Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editor Dan Henninger, assistant editorial page editor James Freeman, and columnist Mary Anastasia O'Grady. So, Dan, Hillary Clinton has lost 7 of the last 8 state contests to Bernie Sanders. What does that tell us about her candidacy?
Well, before commenting on that, let's preface any comment about the Democratic candidates by saying that, by and large, Democrats say they would be happy with either candidate.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's not true on the Republican side.
That's
so the
for
Democrats are going to unify eventually, I think. The most interesting exit poll fact out of Wisconsin that I couldn't get over was the fact that when they asked Democrats in Wisconsin, who would you prefer as commander-in-chief, 50% said Bernie Sanders and 47% said Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders could not be commander-in-chief of a deli. So what's going on here?
He barely wants a military to be commander-in-chief of.
She has clear vulnerabilities, and obviously Democratic voters are not buying the argument she keeps making that she has experience. She's vulnerable on the honesty and trustworthy and freshness aspect of this campaign, and Bernie is beating her time after time. Man, if he does it in New York, it would be really embarrassing.
So the Democrats, it's sort of been the powder puff bowl, Mary. They're swinging at each other, but it's using Nerf bats. And now they're getting a little meaner. They're saying, oh, you're not a Democrat, as Hillary said about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders says, you're not qualified to be president. Is it going to escalate even further?
Well, you know, he lost a great opportunity to really go after her on the email issue from the State Department. And he said, I'm not going to deal with that.
I'm going to touch that.
And that was really his great chance to sort of undermine her credibility and so forth. So now he has to depend on moving harder and harder to the left, blaming, you know, the Panama Free Trade Agreement for the Panama Papers this week, and just basically trying to link her with something that's more related to
big
the establishment, big banks and so forth.
Corporate.
Yeah, and you know, really her big vulnerability, I think, as Dan says, is authenticity. People just don't believe her when she talks. And it was funny this week when she tried to get on the subway and she said, oh, I love the subway. And then she couldn't get on the subway. And then she paid $2.75, which no New Yorker would do, to go one stop.
All right, let's turn to, we'll see how it works in New York. Let's turn to the Republicans, James, and Donald Trump's setback in Wisconsin. I think the big question is, you see him in the polls now leading in New York, leading in most of the eastern states that are coming up later this month. How big a setback was Wisconsin, or will that just be seen as an anomaly?
No, I think it's the sign of things to come. Not necessarily in New York. He probably wins New York. They all win their home states, essentially. Even Kasich won his home state, and he's still trailing Rubio in the delegate count. But I think with Trump, beyond that, what Wisconsin showed is that Cruz is starting, unlike Trump, to pull other parts of the Republican constituency into his coalition. Cruz did better than he has before outside of the very conservative group. He did better with people who are thinking about electability versus Hillary Clinton. Doing better with people who see him as a change agent, but also with experience.
But here's the question. He doesn't seem to be doing that in the polls in New York or even in Maryland. He's trailing Kasich in third in both of those states. And in Pennsylvania, it's very close between Cruz and Kasich. So the question is he really uniting the Republican Party, as he says, to the anti-Trump vote? Or was just a one-off in Wisconsin where it wasn't a pro-Cruz vote, and I'm asking this question, but it was an anti-Trump vote?
I think we're back. I think it was an anti-Trump vote, and I think we're back to the same ball game we've been in for a long time. The polls, anyway, suggest that in Pennsylvania and Maryland, Trump has got 35 or 37% of the vote. And in Maryland, Kasich and Cruz have about 24% between them, and in New York, it's over 50%. So it's essentially the same set of dynamics. You combine the other two, they beat Trump, but Trump has his solid 35%.
Respond to that, James. I mean, I don't see Cruz consolidating that anti-Trump vote.
Well,
yet,
what I'm talking about is the votes in Wisconsin, whereas Trump has been basically locked into 35 to 40% of the Republican Party. That's been consistent for months and months, even as people have dropped out. Cruz is a candidate who is showing he has upside potential. Donald Trump, you see more and more downside with these negative ratings going up. So, Pennsylvania, for example, this is another Midwest, certainly the western part of the state. Pennsylvanians think of themselves as Midwesterners. This is another place where John Kasich is not doing as well as he should in terms of his case on ability to appeal to that Midwestern blue-collar vote.
Well, what does Cruz need to do to seal the deal and to persuade more people? I mean, the problem in New York is in Iowa, he said he disdained New York values to get Iowa votes. Now he's coming to New York and saying, I love New York. I mean, that's not the best sales line. I hated New York values then. Hey, now I love you, baby.
He's not going to do well in New York. But I think what we have to keep in mind here is that this is about collecting delegates. It's not about winning states, as it were. And so that means that what he has to do is go around and convince delegates who are going to be at the convention, who are going to be charged with choosing a candidate who can win in the general election. That's what the convention is about. And so he has to convince delegates who are not bound to any candidate to come over to his side. And that's what he's going to be working on as much as he's going to be campaigning in these states. He's working on these free delegates.
Briefly, James.
Well, I just think New Yorkers, Republicans, conservatives should forgive him for the New York values comment because
he didn't mean it?
A lot of us here talk about the crazy people who run this city, who run this state. It doesn't, it bears some criticism.
He really meant New Jersey values. All right.